Hello and welcome to Techiechap. Today we are looking at Elementary OS 6.1 or Jolnir. I think that's the way it's pronounced. We're also asking ourselves the question, is this the last distro review for Elementary as we know it? See you after the intro. Elementary 6.1 Jolnir. It really is a fantastic looking distribution. It's running very well on my Dell XPS 9530, which has a 4K screen. It's one of the few distributions that really look like it's utilizing the 4K screen well. When I say that, I mean the polish of the fonts that are used on the screen, the way the transitions work under Elementary OS. So for example, these wallpapers, everything just has that little bit more polish than you would ordinarily get in other Linux distributions. Everything fades nicely. There's also a dark mode as well, that's a system-wide dark mode, which is really nice. And the system-wide dark mode works on all of the Elementary OS applications and the approved applications. There are going to be applications that don't respect the dark mode ability. They may not have transitioned yet, so you do occasionally get surprised by a bright white application popping up on your screen when you're used to the nice comfortable dark screen. So the text as well is easily resizable on the screen. There is a dyslexia friendly option as well, which is really nice, and there's also a lot of lovely built-in touches on this distribution. The dock at the bottom can be resized, as you can see there, and the top bar can be made transparent quite easily without having to use an extension. You can also configure hotspots in the corner as well. It's a pretty fully featured distribution. There's notifications at the top, which can also be muted. The notifications can link into individual applications, so you can have customized notifications for each application. That's a mouthful to say. And it's I don't know how many times I can say this. It is just so polished. The notifications are okay, I would say. It's a shame that you can't do a little bit more with the notifications. What they have done in 6.1 is added the ability to click on a notification, and for most of those to actually launch the application, but for a lot of the notifications you click on it and it kind of doesn't really do anything, which is a bit disappointing. There's a good sound control panel as well, very easy to manage. You can switch between different sound inputs, and that all seems to work really well. Now there's also gestures on the trackpad, which is really useful. Unfortunately, my Dell XPS laptop, the trackpad really isn't as great. Certainly not as great as the ThinkPad sitting behind me here on the desk. It's not great at all. So I tend to use a mouse, so therefore I miss a lot of the gestures. But the gestures do work, and you can customize those to your liking. Activities panel, similar to what GNOME already uses, is really nice. That works really well. Again, it's that extra element of polish, the way things fade in, fade out, and transitions, and that all seems to work really well in this operating system. So there's a lot of options here in the system settings. What I do like about the system settings is that it's all neatly arranged. Unlike some distributions where it can be a little bit confusing and there's preferences within preferences to be able to get to the point where you need to, the system preferences or the system settings here are nicely laid out in a similar fashion to the Mac way of laying out system preferences. You would have seen there the ability to add online accounts. Unfortunately, that does seem to be a little bit limited. You can only add LDAP and iCal, I think, accounts. You can't link into, well, easily anyway, you can't link into things like Office 365 or Google or any other online cloud provider. I think I kind of get that. I guess it's because of privacy. I think they kind of want to make sure that this distribution sort of caters for the privacy orientated users, and most of those users wouldn't necessarily be using things like Office 365 or Google. However, I think it would have been nice to have at least had the option here. The reason why I say that is this really is a nice distribution for new users, and new users aren't necessarily going to be that concerned about privacy if they are satisfied that the distribution that they're running or the operating system they're running is secure. Now, I've had to enable tweaks or elementary tweaks or GNOME tweaks on here because elementary takes this strange design decision to do away with the minimize bar and the maximize bar. Now, I don't mind the maximize so much. In fact, Fedora 35 also has taken this decision as well, and you have to install GNOME tweaks or under extensions to be able to allow minimize to appear on your windows. But I'm just demonstrating here that actually I find that the lack of a minimize button to be quite obtrusive. So for example, here I've got my folders window open, and because I can't minimize easily the folders window and I launch another window in front of it, I still have that folders window sitting there in the background. Now, I can understand certain situations where you're flipping between the two, where that's useful, and that's okay. But I would prefer to have the option to choose to minimize that so that I can see the background, my lovely, beautiful background that Elementary has supplied me, rather than be stuck with the lack of a minimize option. In fairness, you can go down to the dock, as you saw there, and minimize the application, but again, that feels like an extra step to have to travel all the way down to the dock at the bottom, click the application, then go back to the application that you were focused on in the first place. It feels clumsy. Now, thankfully, it's quite easy to sort out that problem, but I kind of wish that Elementary would at least give you the option built in when you first load it to have minimize as an option, even if they don't enable it from the start. Just have it as a tick box or a slider that you can just slide to on somewhere in the settings to enable that feature, rather than having to go through installing tweaks and finding out how to do that. Overall, the operating system is really nice to use, however, and as I say, I've been using this for the last 3 months. There are certain elements that feel a little bit sluggish, given that I'm running an i7 with 16 gig of RAM, and I'm not sure whether that's because of the Dell or whether that's because of Elementary, or even the fact that Elementary runs on X11 rather than Wayland, a kind of another little bugbear of mine. And why that's a bugbear of mine is because you do occasionally get a little bit of screen tearing. Also, when you plug in the external display on Elementary, whilst it works, because there is no fractional scaling, no proper fractional scaling, the icons on the external display, particularly as I'm coming from a 4K laptop screen going to a 1080p display, 23-inch, are huge. It just doesn't work. So I find myself limited to simply working on the Dell display and not using it external display at all, because the screen on the 23-inch just looks so terrible when everything is so huge. Again, that's down to the lack of full fractional scaling. So yeah, sometimes it feels like the applications can be a little clunky, perhaps not as sharp as I would hope. As you can see there, I'm running a Core i7. It's an old CPU from 2013, but it's still very capable, and as I say, I've got 16 gig of RAM there as well. Overall, I would say Elementary OS 6.1 is a really good system. It's got some really nice applications, bespoke applications as well, that have a lovely design to them. Again, some of those applications can be a little glitchy. So for example, when I recorded this video on here, it automatically plays in videos, and videos didn't like the format. It was stuttering and juddering. I just record this using the Cheese application. I installed VLC via the App Store, and the video turns out to be fine. There's no problem whatsoever. So little things like that I think could be polished off. GIMP, as you can see here on a 4K screen, to be honest, is a little unusable. And you have to really play around with it to get it to work on a 4K screen. But overall, I would say I have enjoyed my experience with Elementary OS and 6.1. But here's the thing, I've had to think about transitioning now to a different distribution, and the reason for that is because the founders of Elementary OS have decided to part ways, and that's a really sad thing. They're really close to releasing Elementary OS 7, and the most recent news is that Elementary OS 7 will likely be scaled back in terms of features, which is a shame. One of the reasons why I liked Elementary was its stability, the way that there's so much polish to this distribution. It looks so nice on high definition displays, and I feel like it just needs a little bit more work to get it to that stage where it is a fantastic distribution. When I say a little bit more work, I mean polish up the videos, built-in application, try and make it as usable and as good as VLC. Polish up the built-in webcam application. It's nice that it's there, but it doesn't really work very well. And little things like that, if there could be more effort put into those things and those aspects, and to really polish up those applications, then this could be an incredible distribution. But the issue is, now that the founders of the distribution of Elementary have decided to part ways, there is just one person left employed by the company, Danielle, and Danielle Faure has said that they are even thinking about making Elementary a kind of test bed distribution. And for me, that's kind of what caused my line of thinking to go towards, well, I'm going to have to move then, because as I've said, I love Elementary's stability. Sure, they didn't release distributions every single year. Sure, when they do release a new distribution, you have to reinstall from scratch. There's no kind of upgrade in place, at least not easily done under Elementary. So you have to kind of scrub everything, reinstall, and then restore your data, which is a pain. But for the polish that's there, for the experience, the user experience that's here in Elementary OS, it seemed worth it. But if Elementary OS is to become something more more like a development platform, there we go. If it's to become something like a development platform, and with development platform comes stability issues, I'm not sure I can really use that as my daily driver. Now, Elementary OS 6.1 is using Ubuntu as its base, so you will be guaranteed upgrades for at least the next couple of years on Elementary 6.1. So it is usable for, I believe, the next couple of years thanks to Ubuntu's base, at least from a security point of view. But I don't want to invest completely into a distribution when I know that it's possibly not going to be around in a couple of years' time, because that will result in more heartache as I try and utilize different distributions. So, is this the last distribution review for Elementary? Probably not. Elementary 7 will surely come out at some stage, although I'm sure it will be delayed, and we'll see how that is, how many features are in there, how good that is, and whether Elementary OS 7.1 follows shortly afterwards. And I'm hopeful that Elementary is able to get a lot of support from the contributors, from the vast Linux development teams that are able to help, and I'm hoping that people will just look at this system, realize what a gem it is, and really jump in and help out to get this distribution really to the next level. That's my hope, but my feeling is that Elementary will likely go back to its roots from nearly 11 years ago as almost like a development skin for something like Ubuntu or Debian. And that would be such a shame, because what they're pursuing here, what the team have pursued here, is fantastic work. Elementary 6.1 is a fantastic distribution. It has its problems. It has some issues. However, using it day in, day out has been, to be sure, nothing but a pleasure on my Dell. and I've been willing to put up with the little application stutters and some of the built-in applications that don't work properly, because I've been easily able to go to the App Store or the FlatHub store and install better applications like VLC, for example, and they work fine. So my hope is that Elementary continues, that this isn't the last distribution review for Elementary. We'll see how it gets on. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to click like and subscribe if you like this content. Thank you.